Meeting come to order. Councilmember Moreno, if you lead us in a prayer.
Let us bow our heads and remember that we are in the presence of the Lord. Almighty God, upon the cross, sorrow, pain, and every dreadful, tragic consequence of sin was overcome. As Memorial Day approaches, we are reminded of all those who have joined in that sacrifice for peace and justice. We give thanks for the bravery of the men and women who have served for harmony and love. And in this world that is still torn and broken, we declare that Jesus is Lord, that hope overcomes despair, that joy overcomes sorrow, that peace overcomes hostility, that love overcomes hate. From the tomb, the promise of eternity emerged in a resurrected Christ. Grace was poured into the hearts of all those who suffer, mourn, and grieve. Lord, we lift up our hearts to you and continue to remember, to hope, and to love. Amen.
Councilmember Carroll, if you lead us in the pledge.
In accordance with Council Resolution Number B14550, please be advised that all cellular telephones, pagers, beepers, and other devices of this nature must be deactivated or silenced throughout the council meeting. Under the consent agenda this evening, I beg your pardon, sir. We have a request this evening to change the order of business to take item 19A at the beginning of the meeting. I have a motion by Councilmember Reyno, seconded by Councilmember Mr. Chairman, motion fails to change the order of business for a lack of a second. On to the consent agenda this evening. I have item 1, approval of minutes, the council meeting of May 3rd, 2018. Item 2 is approval of alcoholic beverage permit applications. We have none. Item 3 is approval of bingo and public gathering applications. Item 3A, application number 2091-18, Toby Lawrence Jr. to hold a public gathering on June 16th and 17th, 2018, from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. for the purpose of a block party at 3130 Augusta Street in Kenner, Louisiana. Item 3B is application number 2092-18, Custom Cruisers to hold a public gathering on June 16, 2018, from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. for the purpose of a car show at Laketown in Kenner, Louisiana. Item 3C is application number 2093-18, Jerusalem Shrine to hold a public gathering on May 26, 2018, from 9 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. for the purpose of a small parade in Rivertown in Kenner, Louisiana. Item 4 is correspondence, reports from the mayor, CAO, or department heads. At the request of the administration, a report from Mayor Zahn.
Mayor Zahn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council Chairman. Real quick tonight, just a few things to go over. Since our last council meeting, the last 2 weeks, the Code Department, under the leadership of Rick Walter, has had 3 major code sweeps in 3 areas of the city of Kenner, Martinique, Arkansas, and Coleman. On Martinique Drive, we had 42 violations. On Arkansas, we had 21 violations. On Coleman, we had 80 violations. That's 143 violations in the last 2 weeks, which I've got to say, I think that is something that we have to be proud of. Not that we have violations, but not that we have problems, but that we're identifying the violations and we're doing something about it. As we look throughout the city and we see the blight that is throughout the city, we see the abandoned buildings, we see numerous things throughout our city of Kenner. You know, this administration came in and was going to be very, very tough on that. I promise that. We'll continue to be tough on it. And I want to commend the Code Department, along with all the people that work in the Code Department, for identifying that many violations only in 2 weeks. That's the good news. The latest sales tax numbers, and I'm going to contribute this to the blight in the abandoned buildings we had throughout the city, are down overall 2.9% from this time last year. And we're a little bit behind on getting not us, but the way we're receiving them. This is February of this year. So 2.9 since overall since last February. At the mall, we're down 24% from the previous year. This has continued to be a problem. We have got to address this. I've worked closely with Lenny Klein and also Maria and Tom on the District 4. I hate to always say District 4, but the District 4 properties and shopping centers that we need to bring back into commerce. I will continue to work very closely with Councilman Brannigan and also Councilman Wilmot and McKinney on the same issues, because this is something that we have to, this is everybody's problem. I realize that, the whole council that sits here and the future council. But this is my issue, along with the at-larges presently, the future at-larges, and also the future District 4 councilman, along with the councilman right now, Lenny Klein. So we'll continue to do that, but I want y'all to be aware that this is an issue. I don't have a lot to talk about tonight except for those two issues. Of course, we'll have Music in the Park again tomorrow night. I'll let Greg Carroll, Councilman Carroll, do that later on since it's in his district. We have 2 of those left. But if y'all have any questions, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. Item 5 is acceptance, rejection of bids requiring an expenditure of less than $5,000. We have none. Item 6 is change orders requiring an expenditure of less than $5,000. We have none. Item 7 is acceptance of committee findings for final passage. We have none. Item 8 is re-subdivision ordinances for final passage. Item 8A is summary ordinance number 12,375, an ordinance approving the plan of re-subdivision of lots 7A1, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14A, and 17, Plot S, and lots 47, 48, 49, 50, and 51, Square 226, and lots 7A2 and 14A1, Plot S, Crestview Office and Industrial Park. Item 8B is summary ordinance number 12,376, an ordinance approving the plan of re-subdivision of lots 137A and 2 lots 137B, 137C, and 137D, Bainbridge Office and Industrial Park, which lot is owned by Airport Motel, LLC. I have a motion by Councilmember DeFranchis, seconded by Councilmember Wilmot. On the consent agenda, council members, please vote. Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0 for your consent. Under the public appearance agenda, we have public hearings for final passage. Item 9A is public hearing regarding resolution number B16886, a resolution calling a public hearing to determine whether the structures located at 3828 East Louisiana State Drive, Kenner, Louisiana, shall be abated by repair, rehabilitation, demolition, or removal. I have a motion by Councilmember Hand, seconded by Councilmember Wilmot, to remove this item at the request of the Code Enforcement Department. Council members, please vote on removal. Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 10 is opening of bids. We have none. Item 11 is reclassification of zoning for final passage. We have none. Item 12 is other ordinances for final passage. Item 12A is summary ordinance number 12,367, an ordinance amending Chapter 15, Traffic and Motor Vehicles, Article 2, Section 15-21 of the Kenner Code of Ordinances. I have a motion by Councilmember Segura, seconded by Councilmember Wilmot. Councilman Segura.
Thank you. This is just a little housekeeping that came about with the project for CarMax in their setting up the footprint for their building. 31st Street in Arkansas, stop signs that stop traffic on Arkansas, particularly coming from either West Esplanade, 32nd Street and 31st Street, Lincoln Manor. Were there but had no real purpose anymore because the continuation of 31st Street was no longer a street. So this is the removal of those stop signs and allow the traffic just to continue flowing smoothly. But we also have to add 2 stop signs at the 31st Street and Bridge, and then the I-10 Service Road Bridge that goes into Duncan Street. So that's just to help control who has the right-of-way from the Service Road Duncan and the bridge at the Duncan I-10 Service Road where they meet. So just hopefully it'll help the citizens of Lincoln Manor move in and out of their subdivision a lot smoother. Thank you. Oh, I did want to commend Councilman Wilmot for helping out with this, because both him and I got the phone calls and worked on this to get this to tonight's vote. So thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Councilman Segura. I appreciate your help as well. We did work on this together, and of course, Mr. Schreiner as well. Thank you. I know we kind of gave you a lot of phone calls and so forth because it was somewhat confusing, but something had to be done because we had stop signs in the middle of a street that had no interconnecting other streets due to construction. Anyway, so it became a problem, and it was, of course, numerous people were complaining about it, and we had to do something about it, but it's set forth in statute. So the first thing we had to do is address the statute before we can take down the signs. It's just a matter of ordinances being changed, and that's what we're doing here today. And if Mr. Schreiner, if you will, just comment on it a little bit. I know y'all looked at it from an engineering viewpoint, so if you will, just make comment.
Well, the stop sign removal is very simple. There was a side street there that used to come into what is now the development. It has been removed, so the stop signs are no longer needed right there. So all it did was stop traffic for no reason. At the other location, at the bridge at 31st, you needed another stop sign there. They only had one, and so it's a T intersection. You obviously had to add at least one stop sign, and that's part of this ordinance. At the last one on 30th Street, you have no stop signs. So we're adding one for the traffic that's going across the bridge, across the canal.
Yeah.
There it is. Thank you.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah. And this shows it up here, and sorry, Nana, I should have given you a little heads up on that, but anyway. And then there it is. The one on the bottom is the one for 30th Street. It provides a stop at the intersection and allows the traffic east-west.
So it corrects the problems that we were having.
Yes, it does.
Wonderful. I appreciate all your help on
Oh, you're
getting this
welcome.
accomplished. And I ask my fellow colleagues to support this legislation. Thank you.
Council members, please vote. Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0.
Next.
Item 13 is resolutions and motions by council members. Item 13A is a resolution amending Kenner City Council Rule 22 regarding the consideration of items brought from the floor and not the agenda. I have a motion by Councilmember Segura, seconded by Councilmember Hand.
Councilman Segura?
Thank you, Council President. This change to our council rules is really more to be more transparent with what is already and has been legally allowed by state law and our council rules on how to handle the submission of legislation when it did not make either our Monday or Wednesday cutoffs. And in just the fast pace that government sometimes does need to operate at, people seem to think it's very slow, but there are times when matters don't make that timeline that do need to be addressed fairly quickly. So what this is allowing is to be transparent in our published agenda, to have a spot to put in what may be needed to get onto our agenda that did not make the final deadline on Wednesday. And with that, all it does is allow the clerk the ease to know here's where any number of items can go, but they still follow the same procedures and rules that go with anything that is submitted from the floor. It must still have a unanimous vote of council members present to be then put onto the agenda item. And if the item is something that is law, like an ordinance, or even a resolution that can change like council rules, both of those have to lay over for another meeting. So even if it comes up and gets the unanimous approval and gets on the agenda, if it's one of those categories, it's still going to lay over for 2 weeks or more for the next council meeting so that it has time to circulate through the public and have input at the meeting that we do vote on it. The rare time that you will see something come up in this point is a resolution that has no fact of rule change or anything of substance. It'll just be a resolution of generally goodwill, whereas if like the legislative session is in place and we are aware of a bill and we want to send a message to the legislature that we are either in favor or opposed to a bill, this would allow us to get it in at that meeting, discuss it, and have a vote, and then have it sent off to express those views. So anything that's of insignificance, and I use that word sort of broadly, but of that nature will only be voted on at the same night that is put up from the floor. Anything else that's of substance will still have to lay over. And I'm hoping that, and I see Mr. Teff coming up, so I know he's got his point of view, but it is still the intent that nothing is changed to not have this sit through a layover so that the public can have their insight or input when we do vote on it. We do not intend to vote on anything of that substance the same night. So I'll wait for closing, I guess, for anything else. Thank you.
Councilman Klein?
Councilman Segura, I'm not clear on what you're proposing and what are the consequences of what you're proposing. Tell me if I'm wrong. What I think you're proposing is that if something comes up to the last minute, we can put it on for first reading, but not pass anything that night, because I don't like things at the last minute because I don't have sufficient time to thoroughly investigate it and make an informed decision. So explain to me again, and I'm sorry if I didn't understand it the first time, but tell me if that's, am I right with that, or is it, or you could put something up Thursday morning and vote on it Thursday night?
As an explanation, which is generally correct, that anything of any substance, rule change, change of charter, change of council rules, ordinances, they are already embedded into our rules and charters that say they must set over 2 weeks. So no, nothing of that nature can be voted on the same night it's put up. The only thing that could and maybe be voted on, and that's at that point in time, if the council voted on it unanimously to still bring it up, would be something of a nature that would not have any substantive bearings. And like I said, it's just more of a goodwill. We may want to send a gesture to, well, I don't want to use the same example, but like I just said, with the legislature, if they're in session, hey, we don't like this bill, we would prefer you to not support it. Or we do like this bill, so please support it. Or it could be, and legal, if you could help me on some things that may be of that nature, I'm not sure.
Another example would be something that's added on the consent agenda, Councilman Klein, such as public gathering permits. So sometimes we don't get that paperwork processed in time enough for the regular agenda or the supplemental agenda. So, those have to be brought up from the floor so that the person who's putting on the gathering can actually have their permit in time for the date that they plan. So, that's another example, but again, ordinances always have to have a first reading. They always have to lay over. Resolutions do not have a layover period unless it's the resolution that's amending the council rules like the one before you tonight.
Okay. Let me ask you this. With respect to the permits, I know it's just an example, but don't you have to file your request for a permit 30 days in advance?
You file your permit application through the Recreation Department, and once they're voted on, they go on consent agenda. Once those are voted on, they're given emergency effect. So rather than having the 17-day layover, they are effective immediately. So I'm just using it as an example. I think actually in your district, at one time, we had an issue with the carnival. They didn't get their required approvals in place. I think we were waiting on some maybe proof of insurance. But we had to amend the agenda. That's just one example where we had to amend the agenda to put it on from the floor so that the carnival could actually have their carnival. They were already set up and ready to go, but we needed this body to approve the permit.
Okay, but when somebody applies for a permit, don't they have to do that 30 days before the event? Is that what the ordinance now says?
I don't have that ordinance in front of me. I don't know that there's a 30-day time limit. That question is probably best answered by Parks and Rec unless you give me time to look up the law.
Okay, well, that's fine, I understand.
Okay.
I understand, that's close enough.
Mr. Teff, if you can bear with me 1 minute, I have Councilman Reno. He had his light pushed first, so I'm going to let him yield to him.
Thank you, Mr. President. My questions are going to be for our council clerk. First, this is adding an item to the agenda. So it's adding an agenda item, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
As it stands right now, it would add an item.
It would add an
renumber
item number
accordingly.
to the agenda.
Yes.
And the summary on the agenda is established by what document?
Summary meaning,
Okay? Our agenda that we've been following on, I'm going to use my tenure here, my 6 years here. For 6 years, we've been following an agenda, and they have an item number, and each item number designates something. Your consent agenda, your ordinances for final passage, open of bids. How was that document established? Is it established by council rules?
Yes, sir.
Or is it established by charter?
council rules
Okay.
establishes the format of the agenda.
Okay.
It's
So
Rule
what
22,
we're-
Councilman.
Yeah.
It's Rule 22.
Got it. I just want to put this on the record. Okay, so what we're doing is we're amending our council rules to add an additional item on future agendas. Just want to make sure that the public is clear what we're voting on here tonight. Would that be correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I can only speak for the 6 years that I've been in here, but there's been times when items have been put on the agenda from the floor or tried to be put on from the floor. How were you handling those prior? And again, I know the answer, but I would like the public to hear how that was done.
When I receive a request from a council member or the administration, I would read the request into the record as to what council member had sent it to me, and we do a request to suspend the rules first to amend the agenda, and then we do another motion following that to add the item, and we always ask for the public's input if there's any objection to us amending the agenda, and we allow the public to address if they have an objection or to voice their opinion, and then we'll do a second vote to amend the agenda.
And that's done because there is no line item on the agenda to bring that up, so you have to amend the agenda in order to put that on the agenda, and that opens up the public for comment, correct?
There's two motions. One is to suspend your rules to change your agenda, to amend the agenda, and then your next motion is to add the item to the agenda with the public's comment.
Okay,
So you have two motions. So in all fairness, this would eliminate a motion to suspend the rules to have to amend the agenda every time. We would simply entertain, I would ask the council, do you have any motions that need to come from the floor onto the agenda tonight? And at that time, we would have a motion and a second to add the item to the agenda, always asking for the public's comment in accordance with state law.
thank you. That's the part that I wanted to make sure that the public was clear, that they're not losing any opportunity by us adding an agenda item, because we're adding and I say item, an item number, because it's not numbered here, okay? So currently, there's no number on here to do that. So we're creating a agenda item number, and the public would still be able to give their input, and we would still follow all state laws, which basically big one would be that it has to be a unanimous vote of this council. If one council member says nay, then it can't be put on. Am I correct in what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So hopefully that clarifies this with the public so that they can see that they would still be able to speak on the item while I'm not in favor of putting items on the floor. However, I do understand that there are times where if we could miss a deadline that it didn't get on the agenda for whatever reason, and it may affect us. It may be an insurance issue. It may be a number of issues where the city, maybe it would be a grant, and the city would lose out on a grant because we didn't put it on the agenda. And so basically, I'm going to support this. I think it's a good piece of legislation. It's just adding an item number. It's allowing people to know that there is a possibility that something could be put on from the floor. Okay? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman, and appreciate the clarification, Councilman, and as well as Madam Clerk. That's very helpful information. Next, we
Wait,
have,
Councilman, if I may, before we go to that, I'd like to make an amendment. I have an amendment because at the initial time we wrote this, as Councilman Reno said, we did not have a specific number, and I think legal helped me when they put it, it was going to be number 14, but after consultation with our clerk, in her recommendation, my amendment is going to be to move it to the beginning of the meeting, so right after the roll call of members will be inserted resolutions, motions, other items from the floor.
okay, before we do that, Councilman, I just want to make sure we're clear. Mr. Teft, I know I had you next in line.
But I was just going to hopefully save the conversation for
that's what
both
I
the
was-
amendment and what everything is
Exactly.
for.
Mr. Teff, I'm going to have you just wait just a minute. We have an amendment that's being proposed. And Councilwoman DeFrances, I had you before. Do you yield to the councilman? Thank you. You may go forward with the amendment.
All right, so Clerk, you have the amendment?
Yes, I have a motion by Councilmember Segura, seconded by Councilmember Hand. We will amend the item and put the resolutions, motions, and other items from the floor will follow the roll call. The clerk will announce that to the council at that time. Instead of renumbering accordingly, we will put a section right in the beginning of the meeting. Therefore, anything that is amended on the agenda will fall in the perspective order that it should go on the agenda for that night.
Can I just make a point of clarification since the audience doesn't get to see this? This will not have a number.
Right,
I just wanted people to understand. This
yes.
will not have a separate number.
It will just be a section where the clerk will announce and request for any items that the council may have to come from the floor at the beginning of the meeting so that they can be addressed in the proper order throughout the meeting. So we will do them in the beginning.
Madam Clerk, we do have some names on the queue right now. And since we do have an amendment coming up, I think what we're going to have to do is, because I've gotten requests from 2 council persons that want to speak on the amendment. So I think what we have to do is clear the queue, and council members, if you want to speak on the amendment, please push your buttons.
Do you need to get?
Councilman, you may go forward with the amendment.
All right, well, we've read the motion. If someone wanted a second,
Yeah, I had Councilman Hand seconded your motion for the amendment tonight.
okay. Well, I've already spoke on what the amendment is, so I'll yield to anybody else.
Okay, Councilman Reno, you wanted to speak on the amendment, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. While I'm in agreement with putting this as an agenda item, I'm not so sure at this time, and I wish I knew about this earlier, I'm not so sure about putting it without having an item number. So only for that reason, to make it more transparent with the public so that they can see it as an item number. Now, if they want to, if Councilman Segura wants to change his amendment to make it item number 1A or something, and I don't know if we can do that or not, but if it's not a number that's on that agenda, a lot of people look at this agenda and look at the numbers, and they say, okay, number one, approval of minutes. They go down the list. And I just kind of feel like it would get clouded up in here, and maybe nobody would catch it. So for that reason and that reason alone, I will not be supporting the amendment while I am in favor of the legislation. And I apologize, but that's just my feelings on the matter. It doesn't make me right or wrong. It just, says that I believe it would be more transparent to the public to see it as an item number. That's it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. And Councilwoman DeFrances.
I just have a couple of questions on exactly how this would work with the agenda, if you don't mind, Council President. So if I could ask Ms. Hall to please help me out a little bit. When we've done it in the past, like you just explained a little while ago, first we vote on whether or not we want to amend the agenda, then we vote on whether or not we want to add it. And then later on, we actually vote on it. We don't vote on it at that moment in time. In the past, we voted in the appropriate place in the agenda sequence. Am I not correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so therefore, that's where I have a question about. If we were to move it after roll call, resolutions, motions, and other items from the floor, we do not have to, of course, go through the original procedure of voting on whether or not we want to amend the agenda. However, we would have to vote on whether or not, and it would give the public also a voice, but whether or not we want to include this new resolution, first reading of an ordinance, or whatever it happens to be, we would have to then vote at that point in time. Is that it? Whether or not we would want to basically add it to the agenda to vote later on, or is the vote at that moment in time to take place?
No, you would vote simply in the beginning
Okay.
to add the item to your agenda. Then if it's a resolution by council members, then when I reach item 13, I will read it into the record, and that item will be spoken on and voted at that time in the agenda. In the beginning, you're simply voting to add the item to your agenda.
So doing it this way really only eliminates one step that I can see, and that is the step that we have to amend the agenda. Nothing else changes. We use the same procedures before. We eliminate that one step, and both ways, whether we did it the old way or this way, the public realizes that there's going to be something added to the agenda.
Yes, ma'am, and if I could clarify, the item would be announced in the beginning of the meeting.
Exactly.
And that way, everyone would be aware that the item is being added. It wouldn't be added at the end of the meeting. It would be added in the beginning. Give everybody a chance to receive a copy of the legislation, think about it, and then process it by the time it comes up later on in the agenda.
At the appropriate time.
It's a preference.
If I just may add, this is her normal procedure.
That's what I just said.
Less than accept the motion to amend the agenda.
I think we're
So
talking
it
about,
is,
that's exactly, yeah.
and again, we can give it a number, but, this actually was at the request of the council clerk that it be in this section of the agenda, which, I think is a good idea, but obviously it's up to all of you.
And again, I repeat what you and I both said, and so did our council clerk. We are not changing anything other than the one step of whether or not we want to actually make the statement that we're amending the agenda. We can still vote against it. If I decide I don't like something, my vote counts because I'm one of 7, or whoever that person happens to be. Or if the council president says, you know what, I don't think I want to do this time. His one vote stops the whole procedure, just as it always had in the past. So I had a little bit of qualm, I'll be honest with you, for 2 reasons. One, I wasn't sure how it was going to function where it was originally, because we needed the public to know it was coming up. And I think this answers that question of how will the public be informed that it's coming up at a later point, but it will be coming up in this agenda. That's number one. But number two, I am going to make a statement. We need to still want to make sure that the public understands, at least from my point of view, and the other council members understand, and the administration and everyone else who's here. This in no way indicates that, at least from my part, that we're taking this lightly, that we're adding something to the agenda at the last moment. It has to be something that's extremely important, that it be done then and there, and that can't wait till the next meeting. So I think we have to be very cautious of that we don't just take it as a, go ahead, we're going to do this anytime we so desire, that it has to be used very, very sparingly as needed and be done appropriately at the same time. And since there's no difference between the old procedure we were doing And the new procedure we're doing, other than not amending the agenda, we are in essence doing exactly the same thing. Therefore, I don't have a qualm anymore about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman DeFrances, for that clarification, and Councilman Segura.
Well, I was just still questioning or trying to continue the discussion on the location. I heard Councilman Reno say he would not be in favor of the amendment because it didn't have a number. And now I think you're, okay.
Like 13F, let's say we only had 13 through D, am I correct?
Oh, well, yeah, but no, the line that says items from the floor, once they're voted on by a unanimous that it comes on, it would go down to that 13A, 12B, whatever, and be heard if it could be heard that night. Otherwise, it just goes down to first reading, and goes into the first reading section automatically. So the only time when something would go to that night's agenda to be discussed is a resolution, because obviously an ordinance cannot be heard on a first reading. So it's a resolution that does not change council rules or anything of that significance. So it would, that's the only resolution that would go. But it would go to that point in the agenda for resolutions. Now, I'm just looking for the solution because our clerk is the one that, in the original legislation, we had it as number 14. And then after talking with our clerk, she expressed her concerns. So the one option was to move it to the front as you see in the amendment. But if that's a concern, clerk, can we move it somewhere else that would be okay? I mean,
I will accommodate the council in any way. I just thought that it would be a little bit more open to the public if we did them in the beginning, and then that we addressed them where they needed to be accordingly. You know, if you got something on the consent, you know, I could read it into the record on consent or place it where it needed to go in the agenda. However, I will work with you in any way to make it work.
okay. I don't, Councilman Reno, if that answered your question yet, but doesn't seem like it because I see you shaking your head. So I would just maybe, I don't know, go forth. Anybody else have any comments on where they maybe would like to see it? So speak up and let us know. But if not, we'll move forward with the amendment as is and see what happens.
Thank you, Councilman. And procedurally, I think it makes sense to have it early on the agenda. So, I mean, it's what we've been doing. I think it supports that, and it's important to have it early on because it could cause procedural problems if you put it later. So I'll be supporting the amendment. That's it. Thank you, Madam. Oh, I'm sorry. We have Councilman Reno.
One second.
Thank you. Again, I just want to stress, because now I'm rethinking this in my head, and I'm going, well, if the amendment passes, then it won't be an item number on there, and it won't necessarily be as transparent as having an item number where the public can look at the agenda and say, okay, number one is approval of the minutes. Each thing is categorized. So by just putting it as a read-in item at the beginning of the meeting, unless you're really focusing on that, and at the beginning it says, meeting called to order, invocation, pledge of allegiance, roll call of council members, and then adding resolution, motions, and other items from the floor. So, I don't know, maybe somebody may miss that, you know? Whereas if it's an item number on the agenda, it would be easier for the public. So,
Now, if I could clarify too, Councilman, I'm sorry, but, you know, we're not going to have anything in that section. All this is going to do is prompt the clerk to stop at that juncture in the meeting, ask any council members if they have any ordinances or resolutions to present to her, for her to read into the record to amend the agenda. So you won't have any items. It's, you know, the title would be an item, but you would not have a 14A, a 14B, or 14C, because the clerk receives the items at the beginning of the meeting. So really, you're putting the item on there for the clerk to stop and ask if anybody has these types of items to read into the record. So I don't know if that helps either, because you really won't have any items to fall underneath the category. It would be blank every time, because she would read them as she receives them from the council members at that moment, or that time, or at the beginning of the meeting. And the agenda is prepared, you know, in advance, so there's no way for me to put any items underneath there, because I don't get them until the meeting begins.
No, but everybody would know that there's an item number, and they could put up legislation from the floor under that item number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever that
Yeah,
number
like,
is.
well, yeah, kind of like they do now, but with no items, so.
Okay. That's it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilman Klein, you wish to speak on the amendment?
I'm sorry?
You want to speak on the amendment?
I do. I want to ask Natalie a question.
Sure.
You have the floor.
On the amendment, do we need a unanimous vote tonight?
No, sir.
Okay. You know, on the original resolution, 13A, we don't need a unanimous.
Majority.
All right.
Mr. Tiff, are you interested in talking on the amendment? No? Okay, you're waiting for the Councilwoman DeFrances. You have the floor.
Shouldn't really speak a second time, but I want to emphasize again, it will have a number when the council clerk later repeats what was approved earlier to be, whatever the resolution, let's say resolution was to be added. When it comes time to vote on it.
Yes, ma'am.
Again, we're going to still have a discussion. We're going to do everything we've always done, and we're going to have a number, because if we only had 13A, B, and C, and we added at the beginning and agreed to add it at the beginning, well, then it's going to be 13D.
Yes, ma'am.
And there's one more thing that I'm looking at. By reading it at the beginning, the public is now aware that we're going to be talking about it later on. If we just do it at number 14, as you just mentioned, it's a blank until we get to 14. So then the public is getting all of a sudden bombarded with something brand new. They don't have time to think about it. Not that they have a lot of time to think about it. That's why I keep saying let's do it very, very, very sparingly, that we actually add something. But at least they have a little bit of time while we're going through the consent agenda, and a little bit of time while we're going through the, final passage and the public, portion, comment portion. So there's a little bit of time at least to think about what's going to be coming, down the pike later on, to put it, in the everyday jargon that people like to use. So this gives the public a little bit more time, in my opinion, to kind of digest what's going to be coming up and have time to come up and say, wait, I thought about what you all plan to do. You all said you wanted to add it 7-0 to the agenda, even though you may not vote for it later after thinking about it, but we're not in favor of it, or we are. So it gives you a little bit more time to think about it, which I think is imperative. The more time we give people, the more input they have, the more transparency is present. And that, to me, is very important, transparency and time for people to digest what the council will be talking about and voting upon. I don't know if that helps, but.
Thank you, Councilwoman DeFrances. Madam Clerk, on the amendment,
Yes, sir.
please vote.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes 5-2. Councilmembers Klein and Raynaud are opposed. Back to your original motion as amended.
Any council members wishing to speak on the original legislation?
As amended.
Okay. Mr. Taft? Name and address?
Greg Taft, live at 3720 West Loyola Drive. I just want to say that you already have something in place. State law already says that you can add amendments on the floor. I don't know why you have to now create, just for convenience, another line item to be read. The other thing is, you call it transparency. Only transparency I see is the few of us that comes to a council meeting, because the other citizens in Kenner will not even know anything about it. Right now, the agenda, when it gets posted, they have the opportunity, if they desire to go on there and look at it and know what's coming up. That's where I fall short, because the way we have it now, as I understand it, there is a process you have to go through before it even gets on the floor, which means you got two processes working. One is to, accept it as the agenda to go on the floor, then it'll be accepted or turned down when it comes up for the vote at the meeting. But the problem is, you're making it so that you can do it real quick. And to me, that creates the line of abuse, because it could be abused. When you make things convenient, it's easier to abuse it than it is for something that takes effort and steps. So all I'm saying is, I don't see where this even needs to be voted on, but I'm not for it, and I don't think I don't think most of the people would like to see this, because it doesn't allow them the opportunity to maybe attend the council meeting if they are opposed to what's coming up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Carroll, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just let me say that if you wasn't confused before we started talking, I'm sure you're totally confused right now about what all has been said. So just let me say that you know, as everyone knows, this is one of my pet peeves about putting stuff on from the floor. But my point is, I never want to put myself in a position to say never, because that is not a good position, because as everyone talked about, Councilman Segura, the attorneys, I'm going to bring in some safety concerns. We're getting ready to go into the hurricane season. We just never know what we're going to have to do. So it gives us an opportunity. If all of this goes away, if nobody ever remember anything that we said, come next meeting, we can go right into the position of doing what we're trying to do right now. Either you believe it's for convenience or not. But I do think it's for all the people. Even though Mr. Teff said only a few people come here, we aren't held by those restraints. We have to be able to ensure that every citizen has the right to be part of this conversation. We have to talk about it. We have to give them the opportunity. They may decide to come next week and start a whole new conversation. So it is always for everyone. We just can't pick and choose people who to address it to. You know, the saying it from the floor or not saying it from the floor, as a council person, I know it has to be unanimous. So if it's something that I feel crosses the line as far as what is relevant and what is not relevant, who knows? Because everybody has a different opinion about that. If it is something that I feel have not been given the proper position or proper time that it needs to breathe, then I will vote against it to be able to ensure that it does get that. That's been my position since being on the council. So does this really change anything? It does put another step into it, actually, but not to the point where I believe we're trying to be not transparent. It just put one more step in our, you know, everybody's trying to do a good job, trying to make things work smoothly. And you can't fault anyone for that. But each one of us has an opportunity to address individual things and say, nah, I don't believe we should do that. And then that just kills it right there. And then it has to go back from the, from the beginning. So I will be supporting it based on that reason. You know, obviously I don't want it to be something that we could be perceived as trying to be lazy. And it should always be the exception and not the rule. And that is how I always look at what's coming from the floor. Sometimes it's going to be necessary. Sometimes, if it's deemed being lazy or we just didn't do a good job, then I will not support it. So that's my position. I'm going to shut up and just go forward, and hopefully, all of us take that position that we're going to do what's right all the time. And if it means voting against it, we will vote against it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Carroll. Councilwoman DeFrances.
Mr. Taft, I think you know me well enough that I hate abhor bringing things up from the floor. I think they have to be so rare that they're almost non-existent. If there's a timetable where we would lose funding, for example, and the paperwork didn't get to us in time, that would be an example. But other than that, I don't believe very often we should have to do it. It should be absolutely, as I said, very, very, very sparingly. I even hate bringing things on the supplemental that are, because too often I think there are important things we put on the supplemental that should be discussed long before the meeting, and you find out on that Wednesday, late afternoon by the time. So even the supplemental should be something that is used sparingly. That's why we have a council agenda that is, the ordinances and resolutions are supposed to be proposed on Monday, not Wednesday. So coming from that direction, I'm telling you, I agree with you 100%. But I will also tell you that there really is no difference in what we're doing now and what we did before, and I'm going to tell you why. Every time there is one single resolution, each individual resolution, even in the past, if it came from the floor, each one we had to vote first, as we said, to suspend the council rules, and then we had to vote whether or not we wanted to add it to the agenda. The next resolution that came from the floor, we had to repeat the process. It wasn't as if we suspend the council rules and now we add one resolution after the other. That is not how it works. Therefore, if you're going to suspend the council rules for Resolution A, you're also going to vote to put it on the agenda. So technically, there's no difference because those two votes really were one vote in the past. And that's exactly what's happening here. By moving where our council clerk asked us to move it, we're really doing the same thing. Where instead of voting twice to do the exact same thing, we're doing it once by saying we're willing to add it to the agenda, and it'll come up with a number at the appropriate place. So I just wanted to put that on the record in case there was still some confusion.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councilwoman DeFrances. And I'd like to add, too, I mean, what it does, it simply adds order and structure. That's all it does. It's not changing it basically keeps everything the way it was. I mean, we don't have to suspend the rules, but it still can be done, and that's the way we're going to function. So, again, it's order and structure to the meeting, so I'm going to support it. Thank you. Councilman Segura, you have the floor.
For closing, did anybody else want to speak?
Yep, it's you.
Okay, thank you. Again, to the audience, this is just, as I started off saying, it's just a means to allow it easier to get to the moment of the start of the meeting to understand that there is a need to present something for the agenda. The steps are still the same as you've heard Councilwoman DeFrances clearly explain. Nothing changes. We still have to get a unanimous vote for everybody here to allow it to come into the agenda. It will then go to the respective number, 12, 13, even 15, where matters are already put on based upon when they're filed and what they cover on before the 12 o'clock deadline on Monday or the 12 o'clock deadline on Wednesday. They get assigned that number. Well, this is not any different at the beginning of the meeting if, and I agree, very rare. I'm trying to think back over the 4 years that I've been on the council, maybe 4 or 5 items came up from the floor that made it to the agenda, and that's just off the top of my head thinking it's such a low number. So it's not ever really happening, but remember, this is nothing more than what the state law, the legislators allowed for government entities to be able to do to function properly, effectively, efficiently, and speedily. So that, as you've heard from the examples, things that may come up that didn't make the deadlines, that we do need to get in place so that we don't lose out or create a problem. So all this is just, like I said earlier, trying to make it more transparent. This whole document was first read at the last meeting, just like anything. It had to weigh over and then come up now. And it was available to the public, as Mr. Teff related how it could and should be, but it was. It was available for the public to see this legislation and be here tonight. That's why you're here, I'm sure. So it works. But sometimes, as you've heard, we do need to move faster. So again, I urge everyone to support this just for the sake of moving our government in effectively and speedily way. Thank you.
Council members, please vote. Mr. Chairman, motion passes 5-2. Council members Klein and Reyno are opposed. Item 14 is items removed from the consent agenda. We have none. Item 15 is acceptance of contracts and similar matters approved by the mayor. Item 15A is summary ordinance number 12,368, an ordinance ratifying the policy and rates for commercial property insurance for the city of Kenner for the policy year June 1st, 2018 through June 1st, 2019. I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll, seconded by Councilmember Wilmot. Council members, please vote. Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 15B is summary ordinance number 12,369, an ordinance accepting the lowest responsive bid received from Bayou Tree Service to provide tree work on an as-needed basis in accordance with sealed bid number 18-6425 and an amount not to exceed $30,000 for the Department of Public Works. I have a motion by Councilmember Wilmot, seconded by Councilmember DeFranchise. Council members, please vote. Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 15C is summary ordinance number 12,370, an ordinance accepting the lowest responsive bid received from Nortex Concrete Lift and Stabilization to provide pavement lifting on an as-needed basis in accordance with sealed bid number 18-6423 and an amount not to exceed $30,000 for the Department of Public Works. I have a motion by Councilmember DeFranchise, seconded by Councilmember Carroll. Council members, please vote. Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 15D is summary ordinance number 12,371, an ordinance accepting the lowest responsive bid received from Hahn Enterprises Incorporated to furnish and install new playground at Wentwood Playground in accordance with sealed bid number 18-6419 and an amount not to exceed $23,454 for the Department of Parks and Recreation. I have a motion by Councilmember Hand, seconded by Councilmember DeFranchise. Council members, please vote. Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 15E is summary ordinance number 12,372, an ordinance accepting the lowest responsive bid received from Double M Feed Garden and Pet Supply for a 3-year contract to supply grass seed and sod delivered to be used at various recreation facilities in accordance with letter bid number 18-1569 and an amount not to exceed $40,000 for the Department of Parks and Recreation. I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll, seconded by Councilmember Wilmot. Council members, please vote. Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 15F is the summary ordinance number 12,373, an ordinance accepting the lowest responsive bid received from B&H Photo to furnish 23 UBI-QUI-TI UNFI UAP-AC-HAD wireless access points for the city of Kent, for the city in the amount of $6,647 in accordance with telephone bid number T-18-2585 for the Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications. I have a motion by Councilmember Wilmot, seconded by Councilmember DeFranchise. Council members, please vote. Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 15G is summary ordinance number 12,374, an ordinance accepting the lowest responsive bid received from W.J. Blocher Company, LLC, for professional services contract, labor only for lamps, fixtures, and wiring for all city properties on an as-needed basis in accordance with sealed bid number 18-6424 and an amount not to exceed $150,000 for the Department of Public Works. I have a motion by Councilmember Wilmot, seconded by Councilmember DeFranchise. Councilmember
Reyno, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Foshee, this is to utilize a bucket truck to replace light fixtures and bulbs.
We have 3 contracts with Blocher that cover those sorts of things. I think this is the one that is for the street lights. For what, I'm sorry? Labor only for the street lights. So yes, if we had a bucket truck, we would be able to do that. You and I had spoken previously about one of the contracts that is used to change light bulbs at the recreation departments. So this is in addition to that. There are 3 contracts total, some of which would be abated if we spent those funds on a bucket truck instead.
So if we, in the future, don't renew these contracts and don't use it, I don't know what we're spending a year on the services with these different contractors, but that would pay for a bucket truck. So it just seems like it would be a wise move to, get our bucket truck.
Yes, sir. And we've gotten a couple of estimates for prices on those trucks, and they don't, like, you can't roll off the yard. Like, you order it and it shows up several months later, but we're actually looking at a bucket truck and a vac truck right now.
Great. Thank you. Just wanted the public to know that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Okay,
Madam Clerk?
council members, please vote. Mr. Chairman, motion passes 7-0. Item 16 is ordinances and resolutions in summary for first reading. Item 16A, an ordinance adopting the capital budget for the city of Kenner for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018, and ending June 30th, 2019. Item 16B is an ordinance accepting the lowest responsive bid received from Command Construction, LLC, in the amount of $1,515,555 for the construction of drainage improvements to University City and Audubon Place subdivision areas, Phase 3, 2-lane drive-through from Kilgore Place to Houston Place and Kilgore Place from 2-lane drive to Northwestern Drive. State project number H010107, City of Kenner project number 2012-001-DR, in accordance with seal bid number 18-6428 for the Department of Public Works. Item 17 is reports from the council and our special committees. We have none. Item 18 is new business. Item 18A, at the request of Councilmember Wilmot, a discussion regarding Kenner United and Kenner Cleanup Day.
Mr. Benetti, name and address, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thank you, Council President. Walt Benetti, 3009 Illinois Avenue in Kenner. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you and talk about Kenner United and also Cleanup Kenner Day, presented by Kenner United and the Treasure Chest Casino. Unfortunately, our Vice President, Mike Spell, and our Secretary, Jolene Spell, cannot attend tonight due to work and family commitments. Kenner United was formed by a group of Kenner residents to empower and coordinate volunteers so that we can tackle projects that individually we could not undertake on our own. As an individual, I can clean up around my house. I can clean up around my neighborhood when I go out for a walk. But I couldn't undertake a citywide cleanup on my own. As an individual, I can't replace and repair playground equipment. But by putting myself with 50 other volunteers or 100 volunteers or several hundred volunteers, all with the same goal, we can accomplish even greater things. That's what Kenner United is about. We're a 501c3 charitable organization. As a 501c3, we are apolitical. We can't endorse candidates, we can't advocate for issues unless they are our own as a group. As individuals, obviously, we still can. We still have that ability. But we are apolitical. Our goal is to undertake projects that positively benefit the quality of life for Kenner residents. And with that, I'd like to introduce our treasurer, Zach Frigo, who will tell you more details about Cleanup Kenner Day.
Mr. Frigo, name and address, sir.
Zach Frigo, 6 Colgate Place, Kenner, Louisiana. And I just want to expand a little bit on exactly what Kenner Cleanup Day is. We really hope that people are going to see the friends and neighbors out on Saturday picking up the trash, and they're going to think twice about littering. And we also want to give people, hopefully, a sense of pride in Kenner. And what we're going to have is, right over here at Veterans Park, our first 300 registrations are going to get a free T-shirt. I'm actually wearing one right now. We're also going to give, everybody's going to get gloves, trash bags, and a Kenner United wristband. And we also brought Kenner United wristbands for all of you to have today. After the event, we're going to have a lunch that's going to be also at Veterans Park, and it's going to be provided by many restaurants locally. And We're going to disperse our volunteers throughout the city. All 5 districts here are going to be represented. We have everything from Reverend Wilson's Drive up to Joe Yenny, from Erlanger Power over to Grand Lake, and everything in between is all represented. We have multiple groups who are stepped up. The Rotary Club and the Kenner Police Citizens Academy both have multiple members have joined up and are going to volunteer. And our sponsors, first off, we have Treasure Chest, who's just been a great partner in this. They've been a great partner with the city for a long time, and they've been a great partner with us for this. We also have Pepsi. We have Chick-fil-A Kenner, the Original Italian Pie of Kenner, NOLA Appliance Repair, Raising Cane's of Kenner, Public Service Commissioner Eric Skermetta, Benzon's Decorating, Jefferson Parish School Board members Sandy Annapolis Passage and Melinda Doucette, Kenner Councilman Keith Reno, Donna Reno, Danny Ream, Charbear Insurance, Just for Him Men's Haircut Lounge, Kenner's Crew of LaSalle, and Connie Zimmerman have all sponsored our event. And again, it's going to be Saturday. Registration is going to be between 9 and 10 a.m. over at Veterans Park. You can also sign up online. When you show up at Veterans Park, you get your shirt, your bags, your gloves, and everything, and you're going to go to a different area of the city and go clean. Hand it back to Walt.
Thank you, Zach. After we wrap up Kenner Cleanup Day, in the future projects, we'd like to work with every member of the council as well as Mayor Zahn as far as prioritizing projects where we can have an impact, whether, again, that's revitalizing playgrounds, installing playground equipment, special needs equipment for Kenner residents, working with seniors and veterans issues, or helping the Kenner Food Bank. Wherever we can positively impact Kenner with our volunteers and the strength of our several hundred volunteers, we want to do that. That's what Kenner United is about. Thank you, Council President.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. Councilman Carroll. Councilman Carroll.
Yes, sir. Item 19.
No, Councilman Carroll wants the floor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dad.
Thank you.
Mr. President. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. I know we're going to be doing this, or you guys are going to be doing this along with the residents of District 1 through 5. Is this Saturday the last Saturday for the project, or are there other weekends for this activity to take place?
Well, this is the first one, and we hope to do at least 2 a year, a spring and a fall cleanup.
Okay, so this will be the last one for the spring?
Right.
Okay.
First and only one, right.
Okay, and you know, as you guys schedule the one for the fall, if you can, you know, obviously let all of us know. So I think being able to involve civic organizations, church organizations, reaching out to them as we reach out to them in administration, I think we can cover more ground, for lack of a better word. So I look forward to the coordination and to involving the people from all over the district.
Absolutely. We welcome input from every council person, as well as individuals. They can go to our website, kennerunited.com, suggest an area, suggest a project, anything that they think Kenner needs that we can help with.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, and if you gentlemen might stay up there, it looks like you got a few lights lit up. Councilwoman Hand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hi, I never did hear of Kenner United until I heard about Clean Up Kenner, but like, is this a big group?
Well, we just formed this spring, and this was our first project. We've been planning it for about 2 months now.
Okay, and how many people is in Kenner United?
We have 4 officers, we have board members, we have lead volunteers, and let me just state for the record, all of the funds that we receive, whether it's a grant, a donation, a sponsorship, goes directly to projects and project expenses. No one, not an officer, a volunteer, a board member, receives any compensation or any reimbursement for their expenses.
Okay, so, I mean, it sounded interesting, that's why I'm asking the question. So like, if I wanted to join the group or get a few people in my area that I know likes to do stuff like this, how many of us would it be? I mean, is it just the 4 of you right now, or is it like a big group of people that actually are Kenner United?
Well, we have 4 board members, 4 officers, and we also have some board members, and we're adding to the board as well. As far as volunteers,
so if I joined as, you know, just to be part of the projects you do? It would be like maybe 6 of us?
Oh, no, well, and we have several hundred volunteers who have pre-registered
Okay.
and will be involved. It won't just be the 6 of us going out and cleaning up Kenner.
So you just started the group yourself?
About two months ago, yes.
All righty. And I was planning on coming out Saturday.
That's great.
So, like, what are we going to be picking up trash or?
Yes, we're going to
Because
meet.
Kenner, in fact, I just graduated from the police academy Tuesday night and Citizens Police Academy. And several people from the audience came up to me that lived out of town in Texas, and they said, I just have to let you know that Kenner is the cleanest city I've ever been into, and going on and on and on. And I agree with them. So I'm just curious, like, trash, I mean, he said going to put gloves on, and like I was just before I came out, I wanted to know what I would be doing if I would participate.
Well, Kenner is clean, and the people of Kenner do have a certain sense of pride in Kenner. But there are areas that need a little bit extra care and a little bit extra cleanup, like Lake Town, as well as some parks and playgrounds and the major thoroughfares that we'd like to spruce up. So there's always room to improve.
Okay,
And we're offering gloves because we don't want people to cut their hands
right.
and get hurt.
Good idea. All righty, thank you.
You're welcome. Hope
Councilman
to see you
Reno.
Saturday.
Councilman Reno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Gentlemen, I just want to thank you all for putting this together. It involves a lot of time, and kind of sitting here thinking of what I was going to say, and the Pledge of Allegiance comes into mind. It begins with I and ends with all. And it takes all of us to build a community, a city, a state, and the U.S. It takes all of us. And the fact that y'all did this and trying to bring the community together, I'm sure a lot of people will show up, and we plan on attending. And I'm sure a lot of people will show up, and there's going to be a lot of enthusiasm about, hey, let's get our city clean. And when I was elected on this council 6 years ago, some of the complaints that I got were in our mayor's area, Beachview Heights. A lot of people were complaining about the apartments and trash around there, so I know you're not going there this time, or maybe you are, I don't know. But, just to have an organization that the city can reach out to and say, hey, we know you're going to do this next one in the fall. We've been getting complaints in code about trash and all in this particular area, and we can attack that as a group is very powerful. And so I just want to say thank you on behalf of Council District 3 on putting this together. And we're looking forward to seeing y'all on Saturday. Thank you.
And
Thank
we
you, Mr.
appreciate you
President.
sponsoring the event as well, Councilman.
Thank you, Councilman Reno. Next, we have Councilman Segura.
Thank you, Council President. Thank y'all. I mean, any service organization that provides a legitimate service is certainly warranted. I've participated in many of them, so wish y'all the best. But I've had some businesses or even people who have, just like Councilor Hanson, never had a lot of knowledge yet on what is Kenner United. And so, they'll ask me, and I'll say, well, let me look into it. So I guess this is the time to ask a couple questions. And as I think Councilwoman Hand was trying to elicit was your membership for officers and some board members. But if anybody wanted to become a member of the Kenner United, not just volunteering for a service day, but to be part of the organization in its regular meetings, and how do we do that?
You can go on our website.
Okay.
And,
There's an application, I guess?
Well, no, you can just leave your information. We would give you a call and invite you to our next meetings.
Okay. So there's no membership fee
no
or
membership fee.
qualification for membership? It's just find out when your next meeting is and show up and say, I'm a member?
You just gotta want to give to the city and help out is the only thing. If you're
Well, no, I understand, signing up for your service days And I get you, you said you have lots and lots of people who've done that. That's easy to do. The questions that some people have asked me was, how do I become a member of Kenner United? And that's where I was going with this. It sounds like it's an you said you had a 501c, so that means everything that you take in, donations are tax deductible for those parties?
Exactly.
So that's the point. So if someone wants to do that and they haven't really heard a lot about it, but they do subscribe to the service you want to do, like the cleanup of the city Saturday, but if they didn't know really what it meant, who Kenner United was, what's the organization, who's there, and they said, I want to belong, that's what I was trying to find out. So go to your website, just send
We have a contact us link on there. We also have a Facebook page that has several hundred members on it, and we welcome input from everybody, and we'd like more people to get involved. We
Great.
don't want it to be 4 of us plus a 10-member board.
I appreciate it, because I've been in some of those too, and you don't want to do all the work yourself.
Right.
On this cleanup for Saturday, as you were mentioning several areas around the city, and you mentioned major thoroughfares. So is the intent to have individuals walking along the servitudes, picking up trash?
Yes, and the medians as well as parks and playgrounds, yes.
Okay.
And we have signs. They will be going up on Saturday, yellow signs to warn motorists to slow down a little bit because our crew will be in the medians.
Okay.
And
Have
we
you
hope
worked
that-
anything out with the police in case we needed that?
No?
Okay. And you mentioned earlier too about projects like with renovating playgrounds and that. How do you think that would work out? What are the means of that to happen?
Well, as a 501c3, we can apply for grants
Sure.
and donations that the city might not have access to. And like I said, we'd like to work with everybody as far as prioritizing which areas we can attack and which ones are feasible for us. So we welcome everybody's input.
Okay, so by being able to apply for grant, if a councilman or the administration said, look, we want to do this at one of our playgrounds, and y'all could take on that task of applying for the grant, getting it, and then be accountable for all of the paperwork that goes with the generally federal government's inundating you with paperwork on grants, y'all would be responsible for
Federal
that.
government and other groups as well.
Right.
A few years ago, Councilman Reno and I participated at Greenlawn with a Kaboom grant and volunteer labor to install the playground equipment. That's what we can do. We can get the grant, but we can also provide the labor to be able to put it up and install it.
Well, yeah, I could see you have the labor, and that's great. I just was concerned with the actual grant application and the follow-up that goes, because I'm sure Mike Ince is not here, but, oh, there he is. Mike, isn't there a lot of follow-up with grants, with paperwork for whether it be the federal government, state? Right. Okay. So as long as y'all, if you're saying that that's in your control to do that, I'm fine. I'm thank you, because
One instance right now, District 5, we have the Woodlake playground right now. It's a big issue. A lot of people are talking about it. It's been damaged, and you're trying to get money to fix it. I know you just approved Wentwood's new playground.
Zach, if you can go to the microphone, that's okay.
It's hard sometimes to get money and get people together to.
all right. Well,
To get people together to fix something like that. But if we could get sponsorships from different businesses to form together, like we did with this group, and come together and sponsor the equipment, we can save the burden of the $24,000 of the city and just have a sponsored group of equipment. And big cities like Houston do this. I lived in Round Rock, Texas for a little while. The big companies out there like Dell own all the playground equipment. The city doesn't pay for anything out there. The companies do. Unfortunately, in Kenner, we don't have a Fortune 500 company here. We don't have the big companies to step in and say, here's $1 million here, here's $1 million there. But if we have a group and we do an aggregate and go to all of our small companies and say, put a little bit up here, a little bit up there, and we'll come and do this, and we can put all your names on a plaque, then that could be done. And that's something we can do to help the city save funding and work with other, and even expand our park and recreation options.
that'd be great. Appreciate it. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Seguera. Next, we have Councilwoman DeFrances.
Thank you, Council President. Walt, I want to compliment and thank you and your organization for wanting to have a mission to improve our city. I think this is great. When Mayor Zahn was on the council on a much smaller scale, we had a project. It was through Christ the King Church, if I remember correctly, and many volunteers got together and scraped all those extra little, stickers and everything else on signs. Then we had another small project a few years ago in Rivertown where, and I know because I was out there picking up trash, and you'd be amazed how much trash you can pick up in just a couple of hours. But all of those were on a small scale, as I said. So this is great to have something on a bigger scale, which will impact every part of this city, every district in our city. So I think this is a great start, and I wish you the best. And anything I can do to help, I will be there. I think this is absolutely imperative that we make our city the best it can be. And having a beautiful, clean city is so attractive. And we're always looking to bring new people in. How much better when you have something that's so positive that we can show them a city where we care about our people and we care about making it bright and beautiful.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I also think it's important when people are driving around that they see their friends and neighbors and relatives out
Exactly.
there picking
Working
up.
together.
Visitors can see that Kenner residents are taking pride in their community. That's what we hope happens.
And it's neighbor helping neighbor.
Exactly.
The bottom line. Thank you.
Mayor Zahn.
Thank you, Council Chairman. Walt, would it be possible, because it sounds like you're going to get a few council people and also myself there Saturday morning to welcome the crowd that will be there?
Oh, absolutely.
Right, and I know we're doing it in you're doing it in Veterans Park.
Right.
And I'm glad to hear that y'all are focusing mainly on the larger items, because when you do drive around in by some blighted properties or some apartment complexes, you do see those things. So you have vehicles to pick up if anyone has put anything out Friday evening, or like couches, I think some of the things that Keith said was maybe couches, mattresses, things like that.
We have a couple people that have donated trucks and their services. What they're going to do is call us when the volunteers are out there. If they see something, obviously, that they can't handle,
Right.
they can call us. We can try to pick it up.
Good. And just for the record, just so people know, because I do think Kenner's clean, but I do welcome any kind of civic organization that wants to get together, or in this case, an organization wants to get up and help us as much as we can. The playground equipment and things like that, as you know, we have a new director of recreation. He is very actively, I think some of you all at the University, I was not there, but some of you all with the University City last civic meeting, and someone brought up the broken slide and maybe some broken benches at Kenner City Park. I think within a week that was swapped out, and I do believe Councilwoman Han and Councilman-elect Brennan were actually out there the day that it was replaced. We are actively looking at those pieces of equipment. We are identifying all those pieces of equipment, which have already done. It's already been identified. And this new director, just so y'all know, is actively pursuing that to get those things done. So I'm glad to hear that, in our previous discussions, you had told me it wasn't a political organization, because what we'd hate to see is, controversy or things popping up on Nextdoor Neighbor or Facebook like, we're not doing this. No, for the record, tonight, and every council person know this, and everybody watching this tape, we are actively pursuing that and making sure. But knowing that politics is out of it, I'm assuming that those types of things aren't going to become issues to where it just pulls us down and we don't get a chance to respond to that.
Absolutely. Like I said, our group is completely apolitical.
I love hearing that, because, sometimes it goes another way, and social media is great, but it can also be a detriment to the progress of the city. And when you first explained everything to me, that's why not me, Ben Zahn, the mayor, but Ben Zahn, the business person, was happy to sponsor, and I appreciate being part of that. But I just want to keep it to where it doesn't, and that's why I didn't want to do it as mayor. I want to keep it non-political.
Right. We may personally disagree on issues, and I'm sure we will in the future. But as a group,
been a
like
history.
I said, we want to help Kenner move forward and help positively impact Kenner's quality of life.
But as Kenner United president, this is not a disagreement thing.
Oh, no, not at all.
Perfect. I like hearing that. So Walt Benetti, the citizen, that's fine, but Walt Benetti, the president, not fine.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we have Councilman Reno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Walt, I'm glad that you mentioned that Kaboom project, because that was a project that wasn't a federal grant. It was a grant from Kaboom. They donated all of the playground equipment, and volunteers did that. And you know, there are people in our community right now, you know, I'll use Henry Shane. He's donated lots of art. You know, he may be somebody that you can reach out to. He may say, hey, you know, I can help with a playground too. You know, the Treasure Chest Casino, Boyd Gaming, agreed to build a piece of art that's going to go up, hopefully in Lake Town. I believe that that's where they decided that they're going to put it, which makes sense because, you know, Boyd Gaming is there with the treasure chest. But that was a $25,000 gift from Boyd Gaming to pay for that piece of art. They also may say, hey, you know what? We could put another playground in Lake Town. We have one now, and maybe they will fund that. And that's all private, you know, businesses that would do that. So I just wanted to mention, because that was the very first project that I was involved with when I got elected 6 years ago, was that Kaboom project where people came out and actually put it together. So again, thank you all for your efforts and everything that you're doing.
And Treasure Chest is a great partner with us, and we hope they will be in the future as well.
They've always been good to the city. They've always been good neighbors to our city. They generate a lot of revenue for us, but they're always there to help us when, you know, when we need help with something, or we bring an idea to them, kind of like they have their crawfish, their annual crawfish boil, and, you know, and that attracts a lot of residents, and it's a way to get people together. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. And I'd just like to say, too, thank you all gentlemen for coming in tonight and giving us this information. It's very helpful, of course, and organizing and doing what you're doing. And I can say this, my wife and I will be joining you Saturday morning.
We appreciate that, Councilman.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next, Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. Item 19 is unfinished business and motions to reconsider or remove from a tabled position. Item 19A, at the request of Councilmember Reyno, the reconsideration of Resolution Number B16893, a resolution ordering the premises at 1401 West Esplanade Avenue, Kenner, Louisiana, be repaired or demolished. I have a motion by Councilmember Reyno, seconded by Councilmember. Motion fails for a lack of a second. Item 20 is persons wishing to address the council on special subject matters.
I'm going to attempt to, it looks like it's either Chad or Charlie Roby, if you will, sir. You're first on the list, so. And if you can say your name for me and address.
My name is Charles Roby.
Charles Roby.
I stay on 4200 Connecticut Avenue in Beachview Heights.
Okay.
And I got a complaint. What happening is that I moved there over 35 years ago. And it was nice there, 42nd Street. Right now, it's just like the ghetto over there. I mean, trash everywhere. The people who own them apartments, they don't take care of them apartments at all. They got violation after violation over there. And I done saw not one time when nobody ever pushed these people to correct the violation that, you know, that they have going against them. Now, I went to a neighborhood meeting with the mayor, chief of police, sergeant, and all of them. I told them about my problem. Now, that strip of grass, I stay on the corner of 42nd and Connecticut, which is Perry property. Now, I keep up that property. When I cut my yard, I cut that too. The people park on top of it. And I have to wait, like I said, I cut my grass every Friday. I have to wait all the time for them to move their car for me to cut the grass. And every time I've been out there and I talked to them, first thing they throw in my face, I ought to mind my own business because that's Perry property, it's not your property. What you cutting it for? And I had the police come out twice already. In fact, here one of the papers right here where they came out on the 4th and the 20th about the people parking on the grass. One guy, he parked not on the ground, on the sidewalk. And they had I think they would call a sergeant, I don't know whether it was sergeant, lieutenant, or whoever it was. But anyway, they came out and they had to go door to door to find the guy to make him move the truck off of the grass. And that was on the 20th. And the next day was the 21st. The people that they parked clean, this close to my driveway where you couldn't get out. My wife couldn't back the car out. Well, we had a big argument in the street out there, and the police came again. That was the following day. And I filed harassment charges against these guys because I took pictures of what they was doing. And I went to the police station over on Veteran Highway over there, and I presented to them, and they told me they were going to do something about that. You know, but what I want to know is, do they have the right to park on top of that? I don't know. They tell me, well, it's private property, I ought to mind my own business. But if you look at it, when you go down 42nd Street, it ain't nothing but a ghetto on that side, on the left-hand side. On that strip of land there where between the sidewalk and the street, they don't have a sign of grass there. All they got is mud holes there. And see, these people, when I talk to them about it, they throw it in my face and tell me, well, you ought to mind your own business because that's parish property. You ought to let the parish handle it. And I'm trying to find out from you all, is it parish property there? Do they have a right to park there? Because when I walked down 42nd Street, they got apartments all the way to the end, which is nice apartments there. And these people have no parking on grass. And their grass is nice there. And I just want to, you know, why I can't get a sign saying no parking on grass? You know, because see, people respect signs, they don't respect mouth. You see, mouth say anything, they don't respect that. And I've been having a problem with these people for the last year with them. The people just don't care. They park all on top there. And I'm wondering, you know, is it legal for them to do it? I don't know. You know, I mean, y'all as city councilmen, y'all should know if it's legal for them to park up on top there.
Mr. Roby, Councilman Reyna would like to address some of your concerns. Councilman Reyna? Natalie? Councilman Reyna's speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Roby, for coming. It's not legal to park there, number one. But number two is we can actually put no parking signs up. Now, just keep in mind that if I put up an ordinance for no parking signs there, and it's approved, and we put up no parking signs, it may also affect you because that means that you can't park there either.
Well, no, see, I don't park there. I got a double garage. I put all my cars in my garage. I don't, and even my daughters, I got two daughters when they come to my house, I'll tell them, do not park on this property right here. Park your car in my driveway.
Okay.
I mean, it really been a hassle.
Right.
You know, with these people, you know. I like to went to jail on the 24th with these people. I arguing with them in the street out there.
Right.
But like I said, I put a harassment charge against these people, and they still do the same thing.
Well, like I say, I can put an ordinance up, and if it's passed by the council,
I mean, if it could be just a no parking on grass, like the people on the other end down on 42nd Street apartment, that might help. You know, anything. 'Cause like I said, they'll respect a sign because they'll say, well, if I park here, police might give me a ticket, so I ain't gonna park there. About nothing being there, they tell me straight, I ought to mind my own business. Because that don't belong to me. Anything on that side of the sidewalk belong to you.
Let me ask the administration a question. Can we put no parking on grass without an ordinance, or do we need an ordinance?
Unfortunately, I think you'd need legislation to do that.
Okay. So I'll put up legislation from the council office. I just want to reiterate one more time, if you have people that come visit you or whatever, and they're not aware, and they park there with a no parking sign and somebody calls, You know, they.
Yeah, I understand what you're
Okay.
saying. I understand what you're saying, you know, but I'm not gonna have that kind of problem.
Okay.
I know that already.
That's fine. I'll look into the legislation.
One more thing I got to say too, the apartment across the street from me, I think y'all ought to really take under consideration. They got electric wire coming from the pole, dipping down. Look, I could touch it with my hand. Now they got children. I could see it from my garage, because my garage faced the apartment and my house faced Connecticut. Them children jump up there and grab that wire. Now, I don't know if that wire live, but I know it goes to that apartment. And them children run and they grab that wire like that, you know. That can be very, very dangerous to them children.
Mr. Walther, can you please look into that, what he's talking about, and
Well, I told a Ford enforcement about it. They said they was gonna.
well, this is our code director right here, Mr. Walther. So,
Oh, okay.
so I'm asking him on the record if he would get one of the code inspectors out to take a look at that. And also, I'm going to ask on the record here that this administration do a code sweep of that area. I don't want to know when it's going to happen, but whenever y'all can put it on the list of code sweeps, if we can get a code sweep in that area.
Okay. Well, y'all are gonna take it under consideration. Maybe you could put a sign up, or you know.
That's what I said, I'm going to propose. We can't just put a sign up. We have to propose legislation to put a no parking sign. And then at that point, if the legislation is passed by this body, by the council, then the signs can go up. It's going to take a little time to do that. It's not going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, I understand that.
But I'm going to I just wanted to make sure that you understood.
Oh, yeah,
that if
yeah.
those no parking signs go up,
Yeah.
they're not just for the people that you're having an issue with, they're also for your friends, relatives, and
Yeah.
neighbors, and anybody that comes
Well, I
visit
know I ain't
you.
gonna have that kind of problem.
Okay, that's fine. I just didn't, I wanted to make you aware, and it's
Yeah.
on the record that, hey, you understand that it's not for any particular individual, it's for anybody that, would
Yeah.
not be allowed to park there. It'd be no parking signs.
Yeah, well, I understand that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Mr. Roby.
Mr.
Thank
Roby.
you for coming, too.
Mr.
Wait.
Roby, if you can stay there for just a second.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Your address, you have 4200 Connecticut Avenue, correct? Mr. Roby?
Yeah.
4200 Connecticut Avenue?
4200 Connecticut
Where is the
Avenue.
wire located that you were complaining about? Is that across the street from you, directly across
Yeah.
the street? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the wire directly across from 4200 Connecticut. Just want to make sure you know.
I know it's 17, I think 53 they got on that wall. And a wire, it ain't important about it.
Can't be.
I see about this high, and it got a big dip in it. And them kids running, they grab it.
He said you got 30 years.
The address you're complaining about, though, has got to be right across the street from 4200 Connecticut?
Yeah.
Okay. If you will, gentlemen, check into that. And Chief Glazer, you have the floor.
Yeah.
Turn it on first. Yes. Councilman Reno, when you go out, I guess you're probably going to pass this location. Would you look at the whole 42nd Street from Florida to, what is it, Alabama? Or it's the, I'm sure you're aware of, it's the side of the street where the residents are, across from the apartments. We met with him after a Beachview Heights civic meeting, and we went around the corner, and of course, when I show up, there was one car there. He complained about a police car that was actually parked there. And I believe your biggest complaint is they don't utilize the parking in between these apartments because they're in deplorable condition. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So this is some of the concerns he's had. We can tell a policeman to move his car, but the transient population, and we ticket one car, and 3 months later, that car's no longer there. It's a new set of problems. So there's several things around that we've done. We've increased, we don't write tickets the first time if it's like a parking violation or something like that. We try to educate the person that it's against the law to park so many feet, by his driveway. Apparently, he's not getting any cooperation with the neighbors from these apartment complexes. So, but, we'll take a look at it again. But I think the signs will help. If you do that whole one side of 42nd Street, I know you may have to ask all the people along to see if they even want something like that. he's the only one that's going to come here and complain about it, but they do have people on every other corner that are complaining to us, not in front of the council, just in civic meetings. So.
Well,
if
the
you could look
problem
at
is
that.
the problem is from William Boulevard all the way. They got Florida, Delaware, I think, then Connecticut. Right in that section there, that's where the problem at. Because my neighbor behind me, he Vietnamese, don't speak a lot of good English, and he come to me all the time asking me about, when I was gonna go to the meeting. I told him, well, he was gonna have to come to the meeting too, because he said he can't cut his grass because they park all on top of his grass. See, it's just them 3 blocks where we'd have all the problem at. But from Connecticut going down that way there, they don't have, my neighbor had to cross the street from me, but that apartment burned down. That apartment, the one burned down again. Well, she had a lot of problem with them too, but now she ain't got nothing to worry about because ain't nothing there no more. Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
Councilman,
Mayor Zahn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council Chairman. What I would also, he's gone, but Mr. Roby behind me, what I would also do is, and I would ask Councilman Reno to consider this, I was speaking to my code director. People tend not to park, the apartment dwellers tend not to park, as you know, in the parking lot, which is a common area between 42nd Apartments and Newport Apartments. The biggest problem, the biggest challenge that code enforcement faces, and I know this from sitting in that seat, from dealing with this, and you know this, is that you can't find the apartment owner that owns this little spot. They all own it together, different collection of owners. So if you're gonna put no parking signs, it's just gonna crowd up the other side. I'm not saying not to do it. I'm saying if you do it on the Beachview side, the real property owner side, do it also on the apartment complex side. Because then what's gonna happen is you're going to twist the arms of all these apartment owners, and I'll say it publicly, we will twist their arms and make them all join together and actually get a real parking lot for these residents. Because if you just do it on one side, they're gonna be crowded up, they're gonna be parking on the grass. I know you can't, but they're gonna do it. So if you do it on both sides, it's gonna force them to actually fix that parking lot. And I think it would look a lot better. Then we'll have to deal with the garbage cans. But let's get the control of the numerous cars parking on real property owners' property and not force everybody to park on the tenant property.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mr. Walther, if you will, address the council on the wire issue.
All I was going to do is just so y'all are assured that there's not a danger from this wire, which is probably a Cox cable wire, because the electric wires obviously hang a lot higher. And if it's going that low and kids are jumping up and grabbing it, and nobody's been injured from it, it's probably Cox cable. But I'm going to have James Mohammed go out there and check it just to assure us that tonight, while he's out running around doing air conditioning work, that the residents in that area are safe and secure.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Next, Madam Clerk.
yes, that would be the next person on your list to address the council tonight.
Mr. Greg Teff. And he waves. Ms. Dolores Windsor. She's still here? Yeah, if you will, come on up. Over here. Ms. Windsor, over here. Yes, ma'am. Name and address, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone.
Name and address. Thank you.
Dolores Windsor, 1521 Mayfield Street, Kenner, Louisiana.
Thank you.
President of the Lanker Manor Civics Association. And on behalf of the Lanker Manor Civics Association, I'm here to thank Councilman Wilmot, Councilman Segarra, and I'm here to thank the Director of Public Works, Tom Snyder, for helping us with the matters that was taking place in Lanker Manor, and they worked real hard to solve it. And I just want to say thank you all very, very much.
Appreciate that. Thank you, thank you.
I appreciate what y'all have done for us. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you. And just so folks know that Ms. Windsor is very diligent in some of the issues in the area, and I've talked to her several times, and that they're real issues. And when they have those types of problems in any area, it's important to contact your council persons. She did so, and we were able to address, I want to say it's 4 issues. It took some time on a couple of those issues because the stop signs in particular are embroiled into our ordinances. So we had to amend them. We did that tonight. So with your help at pointing these things out, potholes in the streets where they have cones up, stop sign issues, all those types of things, and it's important for the citizens to let us know that they exist so we can help correct them. So thank you for doing your due diligence on your end as well in your organization. So thank you. Okay, next we have Jason Ural. Name and address, sir.
Jason Ural, 6 Cabernet.
Hold on, Council Chairman, did he bring a check from the District 4 office?
Actually,
that what
no,
he's here
that's
for?
actually what I'm here to talk about.
Okay, good, I'm just making sure.
Yeah, I'm also council aide for Councilman Impastato, District 4, Jefferson Parish. And we had our meeting yesterday, and some good news for the city of Kenner. Mayor Zahn knows about this already. Councilman Impastato was able to secure an excavator from the parish out of surplus, and it's being leased to the city of Kenner at 0 cost. So that's one good thing. And also, our office, as well as Councilman Spears' office in Jefferson Parish, has agreed to help fund some of the line drainage repair in the Chateau Estates subdivision. So that's just a couple good pieces of good news for you guys. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for coming. Thank you for that good news. Councilman Segura, you have the floor.
Quigley sent me an email.
Thank you, Council President. Mr. Euro, also want to send word back to Councilman Impastato to thank him for the work that he is doing to help me in some resurfacing of some streets right off of Roosevelt around the 21st Street area.
Okay.
I know he was starting some resurfacing up to the parish line, Kenner line, and he contacted me to offer his assistance to get the Kenner side done, and I've agreed to help some of the costs of that, so it'll be a project so it just doesn't stop at the parish line.
Good.
So, thank you.
Good. I will make sure to tell him. Anybody else?
Mayor Zahn?
So I was joking with you, but I did know about the excavator. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the continued cooperation from you, Jason, obviously to Councilman Impastato, and also Councilman Spears, because I did receive the email yesterday on what was going on there. Our Public Works Department is happy with that. Obviously, District 2 residents are happy with that, and unincorporated District 4 residents are happy with that. But again, we appreciate what you all do. Y'all have been very supportive, coming to these council meetings and making sure all the things are done, and also attending a lot of the Civic Association meetings. So I always see you there, and I appreciate it.
No problem. If anybody needs anything from our office, reach out to any one of us, okay? That's why we're here. We're here to help you guys out.
Appreciate it. Councilman Klein?
Jason, I want to thank you and Councilman Impastato and Jefferson Parish for helping us. So we appreciate your past help, your present help, and hopefully you'll help us in the future. And tell Councilman Impastato, thank you.
Will do.
And I want to mention, too, that you make your presence known, so I really appreciate that, too. Even the civic associations, I see you at those meetings as well, and you're reaching out, trying to help people and trying to solve problems with us. So that's important. So thank you, Jason.
I appreciate that. Anything we can do to help, that's why we're here, so.
Appreciate it. Good work.
No problem.
Thank you. That concludes all the commentary from our public. And do I have a motion? Second? We adjourn.